Today I'd like to talk to you about purchasing a unit off the plan and some of the problems that can sometimes arise in relation to that process, particularly with respect to finance. Now, what often is the normal procedure is that a client will enter into a contract to purchase a unit in a yet to be built complex, and that contract will be subject to the buyer obtaining finance within 14 days or 21 days from the date of the contract. But the problem is that the unit itself and the complex won't be finished for a year, maybe even 2 years from the date of the contract. Now, the problem presents itself in that the bank may well process your application and grant you finance approval. But of course, like everything, the devil is in the detail. And the problem with that is that most banks, their letter of finance approval will be subject to a valuation of the property to be purchased, and that all your financial circumstances and personal circumstances are still the same, and in some cases also that the letter of finance approval is only valid for 60 or 90 days, after which you've then got to apply for finance again. Well, they certainly have the right, the bank certainly has the right to be able to withdraw, or its approval lapses after that 60 or 90 days. So quite often a buyer can get themselves into trouble in situations where their finance approval is given by the bank. Now, fast forward 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, they're notified by the developer that the complex is now completed and they're being called upon to settle within 14 days. The buyer then approaches the bank and says, okay, we're ready to rock and roll. We settle in 2 weeks' time. But the bank then says, well, okay, hang on, we need to do a valuation of this unit, or we want you to submit updated financials or an updated tax returns, or we want confirmation from you that your financial position or your employment status, etc., is the same as what it was when we approved the application for finance 12 months ago, 18 months ago. Now, there is often situations where, because of a change in the market, in the property market, that a buyer may have agreed to buy a unit for, let's just say, $600,000. But there's been a downturn in the market from the day the contract has been signed to the date that it has been completed, or the unit's been completed. The bank goes out and does a valuation, but they only value the unit at $550,000, not $600,000. Now, most banks will only lend 80% of the value of the unit. So all of a sudden you can see that there's becomes a gap between what the bank's prepared to lend the client and what the contract price is, how much money you've got to hand over at settlement. And clients are then left in a precarious situation where they have to run around and beg, borrow or steal to make up that gap. Of course, if they can't settle on the due date, they're then in breach of the contract, allowing the developer to be able not only to terminate the contract, but also to be able to forfeit their deposit. So if a buyer has paid a substantial deposit, and it can be up to 10% of the purchase price, then the buyer is at huge risk of that deposit being forfeited by the developer. Not only that, but then the developer can sue them for damages. So if the developer then subsequently sells that unit at the then going market rate of $550,000, it can then sue the buyer for the difference between the contract price, $600,000, and the ultimate sale price of $550,000, and sue them for $50,000. So, and plus costs on top of that as well. So it's something which is often overlooked by buyers when looking to buy off the plan. They think that because their bank has agreed to give them finance as at a certain date, that it doesn't matter when in the future they then ask for that money, the bank's always going to provide the money. And that's not always the case. So what we prefer to see is a clause in the contract whereby the subject to finance is a date, 7 days, 14 days, 21 days after the developer has notified the buyer that the property is completed. Okay, that's just one tip that you need to be careful about when purchasing off the plan. I hope you found this useful, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.